OneDayAtATime.com comes on every week with Minister Chestnut, live and in living color. So be there every week, because Jesus is our rock. Welcome to Life is OneDayAtATime.com. I'm Minister Chestnut. Thank you for joining me again on another faithful Friday. Yes, as we continue in the book of Acts. But first, let's pray that you are all healed from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, because Jesus himself took all our infirmities and all our sicknesses on the cross over 2,000 years ago. I pray that you're prospering in mind, body, and soul, domestically, socially, and financially. I pray that you're rooted and grounded in his word and that you continue in the faith. We continue each and every day as we wake up, keep the faith, and go to sleep. Repeat, wake up, keep the faith, go to sleep. OneDayAtATime.com. We continue in the book of Acts, where last time we were here, Paul was being shipped to Italy. He's being shipped to Rome, but it's going to be a rough trip because the winds are contrary to their journey, and Paul is trying to give them a heads up, but they're not going to listen. Let's pick it up and see what's going on. And when we had sailed slowly many days and scarcely were come over against Sindus, the wind not suffering us, we sailed under Crete over against Solomon. The wind was driving them, not where they really wanted to go. And hardly past it, it came into a place which is called the Fair Havens, nigh where it was the city of Lastra. Now, they're getting close, but they still got a long way to go. Now, when much time was spent and when sailing was now dangerous because of the fast was now almost already past, Paul admonished them and said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and the ship, but also of our lives. See, Paul's trying to give them a heads up here. Will they listen? Nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those of things which were spoken by Paul. And because the haven was now commodious to winter, and the more part advised to depart hence also, if by any means they might attain unto Phoenice, and there to winter, which is a haven of Crete, and lieth toward the southwest and northwest. See, they was trying to get out of Dodge. But, Paul gave them a warning. Let's see what happens. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, loosing thence they sailed close by Crete. But not long after there rose against their a tempest wind called a Euroclydon. Now, that was a serious wind there coming off the coast. And when the ship was caught and could not bear up into the wind, they let her drive. They couldn't fight the wind, so they were going to have to let the wind let them take it. They go for a ride, boy. They was going for a ride. And running on a certain island which is called Claudia, we had much work to come by the boat, which when they had been taken up, they used helps in undergirding the ships and fearing lest they should fall into the quicksands, straight sails so were driven. Hey, the ship got beat up pretty bad. They took ropes, tied it around the whole bottom of the ship to try to keep everything together. But hey, it was still rough going. And when we been exceedingly tossed with the tempest, the next day they lightened the ship. And the third day we cast out all with our own hands the tackling of the ship. And when neither the sun nor the stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. Hey, Paul gave them a warning, but they didn't listen. Now they done lightened the ship up. They done threw just about everything overboard almost, and they trying to see what they're going to do next. But after a long absence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, you should have hearkened unto me, and have not loosened from Crete as to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of God, whom I am and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, whom thou must be brought before Caesar. And lo, God has given to thee all them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God, that there shall be even as it was told to me. Paul got a word from the angel that, hey, the ship's going to be lost, but everybody's lives will be saved. And God said it, and hey, Paul believed it. And that's what we have to do. When we hear a word from God, we have to believe it. And then if we believe it, we act on it. We walk by faith and not by sight. Hey, what pleases God? Faith. That's the only thing that's going to please God, that you have faith and believe. Howbeit, we must cast upon a certain island. But when the 14th night was come, and we were driven up and down in Adria about midnight, the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country, and sounded and found it to be 20 fathoms. And they gone a little further, they sounded again and found it to be 15 fathoms. They're getting closer and closer to shore, but they don't know where they are. Then, fearing lest we should fall in upon the rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern, and wished for the day. And as for the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, when they had let down the boat into the sea under the color through, they would have cast anchors out of the foreship. Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, Except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. Paul told them, the ship's going to be lost, but none of your lives going to be lost. And now some of these shipmen, they trying to take one of the smaller boats they had along the side of the boat and try to make us an escape. But that wasn't the plan. That wasn't the plan. Check it out. Then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. And while the day was coming on, Paul besought them to take and eat meat, saying, This day is the 14th day that ye have tarried, and continued fasting, having taken nothing. See, it's been almost 2 weeks. They've been fighting the storm, and they're getting weak. Wherefore, Paul said, I pray to you take some meat, for this is for your health. For there shall not a hair fall from the head of any of you. And when he had thus spoken, he took bread, gave thanks to God in the presence of them all, and when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then they all were of good cheer, and they also took some meat. And when We were all in the ship, 216 souls. That was a lot of people on the boat. Most of them were prisoners and the shipmen and Paul, because they was taking them to Rome. When they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. All this stuff they had brought with them, they had to get rid of it because they was getting ready to crash. And when it was day, they knew not of the island of land, but they discovered a certain creek with a shore in which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. It was like a little bay, a little cove that they thought they could get the ship in there and kind of wait out the storm. And when they had taken up the anchors and committed themselves into the sea, they loosened the rudders and the bands and hoisted up the mainsail to the wind and made it toward the shore. And falling in a place where the two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the forepart stuck fast and remained unmovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim out and escape. But the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they should they cast themselves first into the sea and get to land. And when the rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship, and so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. Now, Paul told him, an angel told me that, hey, the ship's going to be lost, but we're all going to be saved. And they were all saved on land, just as the angel had told Paul. Hey, you have to believe. Keep the faith, wake up, keep the faith, and go to sleep. Hey, that's what we do each and every day. Wake up, keep the faith, and go to sleep. Chapter 28. And when they were all escaped, then they knew that the island was called Melita, and the barbarians people showed us no little kindness, for they kindled a fire and received every one of us because of the present rain and because of the cold. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of the sticks and had laid them on the fire, there came a viper out of the heat and fastened on his hand. And when the barbarians saw the venomous beast hanging on his hand, they said among themselves, no doubt this man is a murderer, whom though he escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffered that not to live. He said he might escape the sea, but he's not going to escape this snake that just bit him. And Paul, he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Howbeit they looked, and when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly, but after they had looked a great while and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. You know, he wasn't a god. He just wasn't harmed by that snake. Paul was on a mission, and God is protecting his own. And I'm out of time. We're going to pick this up next week on another Faithful Friday and see what Paul is going to do on this island and how he's going to get to Rome. lifeisonedayataTime.com comes on every week with Minister Chestnut, live and in living color. So be there every week, because Jesus is our rock.